Good evening to everyone. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. K. Thomas, MD Ecofuge, Mr. Dr. Claude, Chairman Swiss NeWater, Dr. Jagadeesh Garu, Senior Consultant Physician DNB, AG Hospital, and Viswakanth Garu, CEO Smartcheck. So thank you so much, sir. I think we got delayed by an hour until 11. But we are committed to have discuss about a topic. So we will continue with this and give some thoughts to our own fraternity. So today we are talking about protecting the workplace of the percentage of chemicals usage. I think we are ignoring this. The chemicals to an extent, what 100 to 200% or it more than that. So the topic revolving around this is my first question to VK, Mr. Viswakanth Garu. So what exactly you feel, from a corporate perspective, what exactly for the two or three decades you've been a facilities manager, managing an IT company, so that's your portfolio. So what you have really seen for last 2 or 3 decades of usage of chemicals, are we really bothered about our employees, or are we really bothered about our cleaning staff, or what do you are also concerned about, your human life and eco-friendly thing? Can you just give some brief about how do we reduce the impact on chemicals or the human using less usage of chemicals or going to an eco-friendly product? Can you just brief something?
Sure. Thank you, Satya. Good evening, everyone. I think the first question is a very tricky question. Yes, for the last 2.5 decades, we have been in this industry. So I represent the FM fraternity of the IT revolution. I walked into this place in '99. So I think the questions are in one way disturbing, in another way a little provocative at this point, especially with the backdrop of the whole world running towards a carbon-free environment where people have pledged by the Paris Agreement. Now, I think the fundamental question is, I would like to say no. We were never really concerned. All we were concerned was when a client is coming or when an employee walks onto the floor, the housekeeping were given a simple task: keep the floor shining, and that's it. There were no other ifs or parameters that were set. There were no awareness factors that were considered. For example, in the last 2-3 decades, we have all heard very commonly the revolution to avoid paper or to minimize paper usage. Whereas technology has to some extent. I work for an organization called Smartcheck. One of the key benefits of us is to move people, industry, irrespective of whichever industry it is, to move from a paper model to a digital model where we avoid on an average 4 trees per month. A typical 300 to 400 people company will result in 4 trees being felled every month. So you can imagine 2.5 lakh workforce companies across various sectors. You can imagine what kind of damage. So now coming back to the question is, while we were bothered about visible things like paper, why are we not really concerned about things like the chemical being used for the floor, in the washrooms, on the kitchen counters, or for the glass cleaning? Now, I think probably the answer lies somewhere in ignorance, as well as we are generally concerned about what is visually damaging rather than what is not visually damaging. I think that's where the perspective starts, Mr. Satya. Probably we all have to really think hard and take quick actions in understanding. And I was just having a pre-session. One of the beautiful points that came up by the doctor was education. Education to people who use this, whether directly talking about housekeeping personnel or people who enjoy the after effect of the cleaning. People like us who walk on the floor, sit in the conference room, use the table, use the kitchen counter and all. I think we should be equally concerned. If we who go long after the cleaning is done, what happens to the housekeeping personnel who literally touches these chemicals which are extremely harmful, both to their nostrils, that gets into the lungs, on their skin, the surface of the tips of their fingers. Yes, we can all boast about the safety measures, gloves and all that stuff, but what is a glove for a fume that's emanating the moment you open up a bottle?
True, I think we consume, and basically the consumption of the chemicals is high at our corporate offices.
Absolutely high.
I think we we procure thousands of liters every month. You know, because when I was a facilities director for my past company, Ernest and Young, I think across India, we used to do a bigger deals in buying, you know, thousands of liters of your chemicals or whatever. Without naming, I think we used to do that.
Bingo. We were more bothered about getting a better deal for a per liter or a per 5 liter can, talking about a pan-India procurement, but we were never bothered about looking on the backside of the bottle where it says the chemical composition of this is such and such, which contributes towards depletion of the nature.
So I think basically, I think from VK, I think it's all awareness which is required for your staff, because we have 3.5 lakhs people working in indirect employment with your housekeeping staff or cleaning staff. So I think more of towards awareness and tell that what's happening, you know, even the management as well as employees should also be educated what exactly you are using, what we are cleaning it. You know, from that perspective, I think the change will come. That's what I personally feel. Thank you, VK, for this. Going back to Mr. Thomas. Thomas, as you mentioned, or what is your take on that?
Thank you, Satya. It's a very, very important question from my colleague. I was surprised to hear the amount of trees that we are cutting for to service our employees and to lead a convenient life, which the main point I would like to drive at today is that we are using finite resources. And when I say finite resources, hydrocarbon, all the chemicals that we are manufacturing for our use, it's putting a lot of stress on our planet. And before we know it, it's going to skyrocket on our prices, put more pressure on our balance sheets, more pressure on our employees, on their health, and the entire system may not seem balanced. To your question, Satya, I think there is a growing awareness about being eco-friendly, not only from a cleaning and sanitization and perspective, but it's also from the perspective of renewability and sustainability. This has been the talk in the Paris summit of all world leaders, and now COP26 at Glasgow that happened a couple of weeks ago, where our Prime Minister also declared that we'll be carbon neutral by 2070. So awareness is happening. I think the issue is it's happening at world leader levels. It might take a few years to cascade down to decision makers and people on the ground. But the faster we realize it, the better it is, and the faster we will be able to sustain our organizations in the way we move in the future. So there's a lot of talk about green cars, electric vehicles. That's just on the automobile side. But we should also look at the sanitization and cleaning aspects as well, because today everybody is using one or the other chemical. And we have alternatives like electrolyzed water, which are proven to be able to, not only clean, but also sanitize different applications. And I think the leaders of today should take this upon themselves to take a bold step and try these new alternatives that will help not only this generation, but the future generations to come. And it's only through continuous evolution or continuous improvement will you see a perfect product in some years. But I'm sure what we have today that is green, whether it's in solar, wind, or it is in electric power, we're talking of hydrogen now, hydrogen powering a lot of electric motors, electric vehicles. That's where most of the major economies are now focusing on. So if you think electric vehicles are the future, I think there's one level ahead. People are going to hydrogen. So I think in the cleaning and sanitization there is scope, and the time is now, because by the time we can't wait till 2070 to achieve this. It will be very good for our leaders in whichever organizations we are, and even in our personal lives to start going green, I feel.
Well, thanks, Thomas. I think giving the wide spectrum on Vera is always good, the vision is always good though, but we should be in a position to achieve much faster. That's where I think the progress should go happen. Thank you so much. Mr. Dr. Jagadeesh Garu, the question today, I think we're talking about what is the impact on human life. It was a great eye-opening for me. So, usage in hospitals, operation theaters, especially for the corporates, for the home cleaners, whatever we are doing, residential versus commercial. So, can you give touch point on how impactful it is for a human being. And any suggestions from your
Thank you, Satya Garu. So, to address at outset, we have discussed about two different entities. One thing is you're asking about pandemic and its effect, what we had. So, the pandemic actually has pinched every one of us to take care of ourselves in multimodalities, whatever it may be. Right from the way how you take care, right from the way you behave, right from wearing a mask, social distancing, or hand sanitization, or different aspects. The entire world, you can tell as simple as that before COVID and after COVID.
correct.
So it has changed. It has caused a catastrophe and it is a nightmare. So every human being is still awestruck what happened last year. We don't know whether this kind of episode can repeat again or not. So what actually we have to worry here, yes, thank God there are certain medications which really helped us to bail out of the situation. As my boss Reddy sir was speaking about, there are a lot of things, but from beginning, as he completely mentioned, because we had this COVID team which worked right from March till today, March 2020. So as well said and done, till November, we didn't understand what is happening, 2020 November. But after November, after remdesivir, after steroid, after certain trials, it's proven, then entire the game is in our hand. But the challenge what we had is, still I always say it is illiteracy, it is lack of awareness, and to that matter of fact, we have done extraordinary amount of videos or our conferences or CMEs to educate people. I personally, and second wave what Dr. Reddy was talking about, I have seen half a dozen couples who has walked into emergency. Somehow I have noticed that females didn't affect so much, but men are. So all these young couples catching hold of their kids have walked into the emergency with breathing difficulty, with lack of oxygen and shortage of beds. So it was so nightmare to see at that glimpse. So we decided, I particularly, I've written so many articles, keep on educating people that it's not about you come later and later every one of us feels sorry for you. It's always before you come. So the challenge again here is, as the previous sessions went on antimicrobial resistance. That is the other huge problem healthcare sector is facing. But the challenge, as my colleague was talking about, every education program, awareness program is happening at the central level, at the head level. Is it percolating down? So it's not happening. When I talk about antimicrobial resistance, so only the big hospitals or the institutes are talking about. Unfortunately, the amount of usage of antibiotics is much more in the ground level. So 90% of antibiotics is used elsewhere. Maybe I don't know whether he has the drugs, the authenticity or authority to prescribe the drug. So we didn't have the proper policy of over-the-counter drugs in India. So maybe at one point of time, maybe rest of the countries can point out at India. So the global antimicrobial resistance India is the reason for that. Maybe if not India, other third world countries. So we have the awareness, the healthcare awareness is very, very important. So illiteracy or whatever. Now coming to the second point, what is the role of day-to-day chemicals in our life?
Correct, sir.
So recently, again, this is also 1.5 months, 2 months before, because I being a physician, that a lot of people walk into my clinic. So they always ask, when people don't know where to go, they land up in the physician's chamber. So, but somehow everyone has to understand, the healthcare system is always physician driven, because if you have lot of doubts, you come to your physician clarifies it and leads you to the path. So in this particular context, obesity is the global pandemic. You agree, you disagree, obesity is there, was there, is there, and it will be there for us. And this is most dangerous because obesity can lead to nothing less than 12 to 14 other dangerous problems. Now the recent paper which has quoted in Nature, which has come 1.5 months before from the University of Canada, it mentions that chlorpyrifos,
which is the commonest used pesticide among the 32 chemicals which are used in our day-to-day life, is the main reason for obesity. So a lot of people walk into me and ask, sir, I'm putting on weight. They immediately blame it on thyroid. No, ma, your thyroid is all right, don't worry. Then they'll blame it on something. Then go to some other programs, pay some 50,000-60,000. They do every possible thing. They don't realize the basic things. Your sleep, your what do you eat is what you are today.
Correct.
So when it comes to eating, we are always worried about what are we eating, has it gone through any pesticide exposure? So everyone has, now organic is the biggest
Word.
hyped word.
Yep.
Now I always want to ask, how organic is organic? Now who is going to authenticate that?
Nobody is there to authenticate.
Yes, it will be, because everywhere it has become a best business module or marketing stunt. Now how organic is organic, and who is authenticating or authorizing this organic? So these are some important things, because most of the times we never know, we don't see what is happening by the time you reach that demurrage, and it is irreparable. So at this juncture, we can only educate people, as well as you just thoroughly check your daily activities. Where are we using? Where are we not using? Is there an alternative for that? Is there not an alternative? If you have an alternative, is it economical to use? Maybe simple, because people don't realize that chasing the careers, we don't understand infertility has gone the biggest problem. Now, what is the reason for infertility? For women, it is endometriosis or some other. Simply speaking, there are beautiful papers on this also. The reason for infertility or endometriosis, the amount of plastic we use day to day. Your lunch boxes, your glasses, what not. Why can't we change this plastic into maybe a metal is fine than plastic?
True, sir.
So we know, all of us know, but what things have we changed? How strict are we implementing? So this makes the difference, I think.
Absolutely, doctor. I think it gives a wide, eye-opener when you said about a few things. We would love to know from you.
I think we should take note of three big trends. The first is that everything in life is balance. The second is that we have a tendency to go from not enough to too much, and then there is a need to regulate it. And finally, we come from problems to convenience. And again, this is an excess which needs to be corrected. Everything in life is balance. If you take the population of the Amazon rainforest, those are people who were and still live in perfect harmony with the environment. And it could continue for centuries as it happened for the centuries in the past. There is an ecosystem which is balanced. If you take the population in the Sahel, so south of Sahara, you had for very, very long the same type of balance, and also a balance between the people who lived out of agriculture and people who lived out of having animals. And now, with the climate change, you see that balance has become fragile and is lost. When you look at our own organism, we all need bacteria. If not, we would not be able to digest, and many of the functions are needed. But if we lose the balance, those bacteria will eat us up. So they are our friends and they are our enemies. It's not the one or the other, it's again a question of balance. So I think everything in the life means balance, but unfortunately our Western type of society has generated a model of imbalance, which needs corrective measures. The second point is that, and it's a natural trend, we all started in the history from having not enough, risk that maybe you have not enough to eat, risk that you don't have enough shelter to be protected, to you want more and more and more, and the more you gather, you end up with too much, which again leads to, of course, that imbalance. The energy. Well, it's a very, very obvious statement, especially now with the Copenhagen COP, that fossil energies have created a total imbalance which put our world in danger. But not all. Constructions. We are more and more and more eating on the nature around us, which means that in a number of, let's say, well-organized countries like mine in Switzerland, you have unbelievably complicated rules in order to regulate the construction and avoid that you destroy what remains. The agriculture, we go for example, destroying the primary forest in order to plant the oil trees. You get very good economic profit, but it's not sustainable. You can continue. Plastic, you had just mentioned the same. Our society could nearly be quoted as a plastic society, but plastic is not degradable. Pharma, we have, at least in Europe, I wouldn't say an excess of medicine, but we are all happy to have those medicines. But at the same time, for example, the cost of the last year, the cost of the medicines for somebody who has cancer in the last year of life in the US has increased in 15 years from $50,000 to $200,000. Now, somebody has to pay for that. And again, we have gone to something which is excessive. So chemical is following the same logic. Chemical was useful. Chemical was useful in order to be phytosanitary and to improve the yield of agriculture. But now, too much of it makes it harmful for the nature.
Correct.
Chemical was useful in the pharma industry, but now we have too much of it, and we have those famous bacteria which are resistant to the antibiotics. Food, we managed to have very good packaged food. I worked at Nestle some years ago. It's clear that you have much less wastage, but at the same time, your food is getting less and less natural and may generate some disorder. So, in the chemical or in the non-natural way of doing things, we have little by little gone too far. You all know that famous illustration of the frog. If you put a frog in very warm water, the frog jumps out of the bucket. If you put the frog in water which is cold, and little by little you eat it, it would get accustomed, and one day, of course, it can't survive because the frog is boiled. But it's a question of, like many crises, like the financial crisis, etc., you get accustomed to go too far. So it's not that it's wrong per se, but it's that at some point you have going beyond the limit. That's exactly what happens with chemical. If you take our fields, it's good to have chemicals to clean the soil so that they are not dirty, or so that they are not too much with infection. it's good to have chemicals in the toilet so that the toilets would be hygienic. It's good to have chemicals in a hospital to avoid the spread of infection. But there is a stage, and of course that stage has been reached, where chemicals become extremely harmful for our own environment, and there is a need to stop it and to replace it by something which can continue. So if you can replace chemicals by biodegradable, it's not a question of going back to the Stone Age. Nobody wants that. But if, just as in many developed countries, the cars will become all electric cars or maybe hydrogen cars, but no more fossil energy, the same way many of the practices in the cleaning and in the disinfection, we will change from chemical to non-chemical, from harmful to non-toxic. And then it's always, I come to my previous point, a question of balance. Because if you're in a hospital, your prime objective is to kill the bacteria. You don't want to have an infection in the hospital. So you don't say, I will stop the chemicals because, well, I take the risk. No, you don't take the risk. But if you have a possibility, and it exists, to produce the same effect in a non-chemical way, this is the solution. And what does it imply? It implies technology, because it's disruptive, it's brand new. It implies education, because people who used the chemical product, they will also say, we always did it like this. And that power of inertia, of doing it because we have always done it the same way, is one of the major enemies. And the third point is, of course, greed. Because like in any business, people have established very efficient factories, and they try to protect the investment, to protect the business by avoiding the change. You know, take the case of Kodak. Everybody used to take the pictures in a certain way. Now you take the pictures with your smartphone. The traditionalists, they always tried to stop the change. But the day when the technology has made it so clear that it's better, they change. A sector which has nothing to see with health, but tobacco. The large tobacco companies did everything to avoid the electronic cigarette. But in secret, they prepared the best electronic cigarette. And now I'm really amazed to hear that the major cigarette companies in the world are advocating the end of the cigarette. Because they come with an electronic version, which, by the way, from a regulatory point of view, is taxed much less than the normal cigarette, and they try to recuperate the same customers. Not all the chemicals are toxic. We want to avoid the toxic chemical things. So the science has to come with a proposition which is not more expensive than the traditional product. If it is expensive, I know very well that nobody will buy it. But it must be something where the technology enables to replace the toxic chemical things by non-toxic at the same cost or at a lower cost. And finally, you need to have the population, maybe the universities, who educate the people to change their habits. The good news, and I stop here, but it's my 30 seconds of advertising, the good news is that the technological solution exists. What we do with Swiss NeWater is a machine where you are able to produce equally effective product, checked by microbiome, very often fallout reduction, so extremely efficient product, biodegradable and cheaper. And then it's a question for the market to realize that the world has changed and that at the same time you can offer a better product, cheaper, which is good for the environment. I pass it to Manu.
Thanks, Dr. Claude. Welcome that and bring that change into the global market. Thank you so much, Claude. I discussed. Sarita Garu, can you just touch upon base with as you are a microbiologist, some key points about this topic so that we can end this topic. If we can, yeah.
Using a good chemicals, but are they biodegradable? Are they a green product? Because on one side we are saying that we are using a organic food, and another side we are using such a hazardous chemicals and allowing them really to get released into the environment, and again it is getting mixed with water, and again it is it's a circle, it's coming back to us only, and it is affecting our future life. We are not thinking on that, so we have to think in that way also, whether really such a high concentration of chemical. So for that right chemical which is safe for your life, your skin, your eyes, and again it will protect yourself from different attacks, and that should be with minimum concentration. Excess concentration will again reduce the biodegradability of that solution in the environment. So, and in this way it will develop a resistant pathogens. So we have to take care that how we will protect ourselves without developing any resistant bacteria, resistant viruses, and not getting afraid, but educate yourself in such a way that use right green product which is biodegradable, so it will not affect the environment and will protect yourself from different attacks. So in that way, if we think, then definitely our future will be, very good future. Next generation will be safe from different chemicals, and we will protect ourselves from different attacks. So
Thanks, Sarita Garu. I think thanks for your valuable words. I have to bring back some information to the society. I think we made this day. Thank you so much. I would like to welcome Mr. Sambit Garu and his team to state text. Mr. VK. VK for joining us, accepting the invite. Thank you so much. Thanks, Sambit Garu. We request to felicitate Dr. Jagadeesh Garu for honoring us coming. I would request more mementos before we end the day with a happy note.